Hello, Chris Godinez, licensed professional counselor, also the host of We Need to Talk on every Sunday at noon. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and Jesus alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. This video is sponsored by BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. They're an online therapy company, and this is what this video is about. We are going to discuss how BetterHelp works and how BetterHelp can help you. So this is what this is about. So hold on a second. Let me introduce my guest. This is Jesus Joe. She is the clinical director of BetterHelp.com, and I want to read you her resume because she's awesome. So she is a licensed marriage and family therapist with clinical focus on Asian American mental wellness, anxiety, stress management, relationship and family dynamics, and trauma relief. She is the head of clinical operations of BetterHelp, where she works to create the best therapeutic experience for BetterHelp members. Prior to joining BetterHelp in 2017, Jesus provided therapy to individuals and families in community mental health clinics, schools, K through 12, and day treatment centers. So I would like to welcome you. Hello, Jesus.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Prepped by watching some of your content, so I feel like I have a good feel of where this conversation might go, and I'm eager to get into it.
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, what drew you to BetterHelp? What caused you to go, yes, this is where I want to work?
The answer is actually not that glamorous, but I think it's very relatable to a lot of folks in our field.
Okay.
The biggest thing that drove me away from where I was burnout.
Okay.
I worked in community mental health for several years, and a lot of aspects of that work I really enjoyed, and I actually still miss very much to this day. But in some contexts or another, multiple places here and there, I was recognizing my own burnout coming from knowing the stats around, public sector mental health service. The rate at which people enter a system anyway, regardless of having had a lot of services provided to them, is quite high. And so I was starting to feel like I want to stay in the field, but I want to do something different. And I'd like to get my foot into a space in which I can really see more impact. I was making, I think, good impact with my caseload of 20 to 25 clients. But I think I was just kind of feeling like, I think I want to try to get involved in something bigger, something beyond my little caseload. And I was just casually looking for things. I wasn't aggressively even looking for a job at that time, but I saw something on Facebook. So, we are all on social media, scrolling through our things. And somebody in my network had posted something about this company, BetterHelp. And at the time, this was back in 2017, people weren't really, keen on the idea of trying to find a therapist online, let alone have their sessions through their phone.
Right.
But it seemed unusual enough for me to take a break. I think at the time I was thinking, I'm going to try this like weird startup thing for a little bit. And then I'm going to go right back into where I was. And
isn't it
still in that period.
Amazing how this is kind of like exploded? It's like taken off doing online and chatting and all, the pandemic really, I think, changed forever the way that we all do therapy now. So I think it's really interesting that BetterHelp was actually kind of one of the first companies that started doing that long before we quote unquote needed to. So that's really kind of cool. So I've had tons of questions from listeners, and they want to, before they dive into getting a therapist or using BetterHelp, they wanted to know exactly how does it work. So can you walk us through when somebody finally goes, oh my gosh, I need a therapist. I think I'm going to try BetterHelp. How do they do that? What's the process? Can you walk us through that?
Yes. And our hope and part of our mission was to make this part of it easier. Not easy. None of this is easy, right? You are challenging yourself to step into a world that maybe you haven't wanted to for a variety of reasons. But our hope is to make this accessible to you. So there are a couple of different ways you can find us and begin your journey. So if you're using a computer, you just go to your preferred browser. Actually, our preferred browser for this is Chrome, but it's betterhelp.com. And it's as easy as locating us on the website, and you'll see a get started button. But if you don't have a computer, since a lot of people don't anymore or these days, you can also use your smartphone. So if you do have a smartphone, you can look for BetterHelp in the App Store or in the Google Play Store. It's in both locations. And from there, you download the app and then you get started. It's pretty straightforward. And what you begin with is answering some questions about yourself. And if you've ever been to a doctor's office, then you know what this is like. They ask you about different medications you might be on or different times you've been hospitalized. And the reason they're doing that is to learn more about your medical history, since now they're knowing you're here because you're trying to look into something that potentially is disturbing your life and you want some kind of treatment. So we do something similar is we ask you a bunch of questions about yourself, but hopefully not too many, because we've also looked at how many questions is when people stop paying attention.
Exactly. So let me just clarify for the audience what that is. So basically what it is, it's like a background. It's a biopsychosocial. It's like what's going on physically, what's going on emotionally, what's going on medically, what's going on, so that we have a better idea of how to help this person.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So we're asking questions like, how's your sleep been the past couple of weeks? But we're also asking you to tell us what brings you to therapy today, or what brings you to be interested in signing up for this. And once you provide all this information, you also have a chance to indicate what kind of therapist you're looking for. So it could be as broad as, I would like to work with a female presenting therapist that works with folks struggling with anxiety. But it can also be as specific as, I really want to work with a therapist who identifies as a person of color, that's part of the LGBTQ plus community, that has experience with working with, survivors of trauma, that is also raised by someone that might be a narcissist. So it can get as specific as that. And we will try our very best to match you with a provider that matches that information based on what the therapists are indicating in their own account settings. So we will make that initial match for you based on the info you have, based on the info we have on the therapists. And from there, you'll get emailed as soon as the match is made, so that you can go in there and send a first message. You can even book your first session. You'll have access to your therapist schedule in order to do that. And that's initially how things get started.
So let's say, okay, so you're going along, you get the therapist, and you suddenly realize, oh, this therapist and I do not mesh. What do I do? So what can a client do?
And this may happen for sure. I'm sure you have listeners that married the first person they ever dated and it's worked out wonderfully and beautifully. But I imagine you have listeners where they did that and it wasn't the best matchup. And in fact, they've gone on and moved forward from that relationship and found somebody that works better for them. So of course, your relationship with your therapist, very, very different from a personal or romantic relationship. But the analogy there is that sometimes it takes a few tries of doing something or trying different things before you find the one that really feels like the best match for you. So if you get matched with a therapist that either you or the therapist, because they can say this too, it's not the best fit, we have strived to make it as simple and straightforward for you to get matched up with a new provider. So it's just a click of a few buttons, or if you're using your phone, you're tapping a few places in order to change therapists directly from your account. And in a lot of other settings or experiences that people have had, depending on where you are, sometimes you don't have the option to change therapists, or sometimes you have to wait a very long time before another is available. So that's been part of something we really strive to do, is make finding your therapist really easy. And finding a therapist, or I should say easier, but finding a therapist in itself, it takes some work. So finding a therapist when the first one doesn't match up, you know that you're going to be asking certain targeted questions to understand if it's a good fit. But the actual act of changing therapists can be done very, very easily from your account, as many times as you need to.
Oh, good. Yeah, because specifically when you're working with something very specific, like, for example, domestic violence, narcissistic abuse, all of that sort of good stuff, it's really important to find a therapist that you really jibe with. Like, you've got to really jibe with them, because if you don't, it's not going to work, So that's really awesome. That is really cool. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was, so you've got what, 30,000 therapists to choose from?
Yes and no, because there's the network is that large. When you see that figure, people are probably hearing that, seeing that in marketing. material. But something to consider is therapist availability. Not all 30,000 of these people are taking new clients every day.
Ah,
And also licensing. So we do consider, of course, licensing considerations. So if a therapist is licensed in California and has indicated they only want California clients and only want California referrals, then no, this person's not available to you, person in Pennsylvania that's looking for a new therapist. So it is a large network. We are very proud. I am very proud for having built such a large network, because I do come from settings in which most of the time clients don't get a choice in their therapist, let alone being able to switch therapists.
right.
Um,
Exactly. I mean, that was the one thing I heard, especially during the pandemic, is that everybody was booked. I mean, I was seeing like 45 clients a week, and I'm like,
gosh.
You so, and it was like impossible to fit new people in. And so this is great that, there's such a large network that you could potentially get a new therapist if you needed to, and I love the fact that you're paying attention to the licensure, which is a huge issue because some states are totally cool. They're like, yeah, go ahead, practice wherever and whenever and blah, blah, blah. And other states are like, if you cross state lines, and I'm like, oh, for Pete's sakes. So, so this is awesome. This is really good. So talk to me about the different ways that clients can get a hold of their therapist, that they can do sessions, because something that is very specific to my population is that they've got maybe an abuser who's constantly watching them, and it's super hard to get away from them, or it's super hard to be in therapy and not let the abuser know, or that kind of thing. So talk to me about the different ways that people can talk to their therapist.
Sure. And I'm very sorry to hear that this is something that you're having to engage with all the time, but it's the reality. There's a lot of people out there in that kind of situation. So I will say that BetterHelp, if you have a mobile phone that you do have accessibility to your own privacy over, it is a very discreet option. You don't have to go anywhere. Although you will need to find a quiet space. I will say I've had clients take their sessions in a parked car.
Yeah,
I've had clients step out of their home and sit on the curb right in front of their driveway. So as long as you have a pretty solid internet connection or data reception, you're going to be able to have these sessions. And that's, me talking to somebody over the phone or over a video session like we're doing right now. This happens when you schedule what's called a live session. Of course, in traditional in-person therapy, it's just sessions. But for us, we just make this distinction between a live session and then asynchronous communication, which just means it's not in real time. So people can think of that asynchronous piece as email. You send an email to somebody and you generally don't expect for them to email you back right away. So this is something that you want to talk to your therapist about when you first sign up, is how often or how frequently, how much later can you generally expect a response from them during various times of day or different days of the week. But if you do want to have that undivided attention, an actual session with your therapist, you schedule that using a calendar, and you can connect either through video, through audio or phone, or even a live chat message if that makes sense for you and your therapist. And then in between those sessions, you have the option to supplement those sessions with that, like I said, asynchronous messaging, which is, I know, a word that we don't really use every day. Right. It just means it's not in real time. So you can send a message and they'll respond.
What does that mean? Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's wonderful. So they have options to email them, like if it's in the middle of the week, if something comes up and they're just kind of like, hey, just wanted you to know, or, question or whatever. That's fantastic. Okay. So what else do I want to make sure that people hit on? Okay. So how many do you think out of, well, I don't even know if you would know this answer. How many do you think out of the 30,000 would be trauma therapists that would?
Oh, that's a good question. You're right. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I know that you're a trauma therapist, and yes. I consider myself a trauma therapist. And, in an ideal world, all therapists are trauma informed. In an ideal world, every single person that's engaging in this kind of work has been exposed to some kind of trauma-informed training, if not read about it themselves in their outside research. But I don't know the numbers off the top of my head of who considers. Yeah,
that's
but, we as BetterHelp really strive for a lot of reasons for all therapists to be trauma informed. I think that's my personal thought.
Right.
And part of how we can try to get therapists closer to this place is providing a library of free to them CEs that they can take. We partner with a vendor so that they can have access to a variety of different trauma trainings. So even if somebody comes on to BetterHelp and they don't have as much experience working in trauma relief, they can find trainings to fulfill their CE requirements through being a provider on BetterHelp.
That will educate them in this particular area. That's fantastic. I love that. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about? So we talked about the matching. Hold on just a second. I want to click over to my little questions that I have. We talked about the different ways they can communicate. Oh, I know. So how many sessions are there generally? Like, I know there's packages, and I'm not quite sure I know because I haven't looked at it in a while. So I know there's packages. I know it's really affordable, which is what I loved, because the population I work with, like I said, they've got a spouse or a family member that's, making sure they don't have money and stuff. So what are the packages like? What are the different options?
Yeah. It's a standard subscription model. So for people that have signed up for subscriptions elsewhere, and for people that haven't, this is a review. You sign up and you're basically indicating that you either want a monthly subscription or a weekly subscription. And that monthly, weekly is the cadence of which we are renewing your subscription automatically. Okay. So the most standard subscription that I see people choose is the monthly one. The monthly one does renew every 4 weeks. And what's included in this upfront cost that you're paying through your subscription is a weekly live session, at least a weekly live session. If you want more than one session per week, this is something that you talk to your therapist about. And then when there's considerations on how that might affect your billing, all of that information is going to be available in somebody's billing settings. They can always contact us directly from a contact form. Anybody, including active members, can email us at any time with questions, contact@betterhelp.com. And, outside of these sessions, people can also message their therapist at any time, with the understanding that your therapist is a person that eats, sleeps, goes out, has a family, friends, all these things. So while you can message anytime, literally you can log into your thing and send a message, whatever time of day, any holiday, weekend, with the understanding that your therapist probably has a working hours schedule. So that's something to just talk to your therapist about.
Right.
And if for whatever reason these subscriptions are not accessible to people because of the cost, our team is very much available to work with each person, because we don't want cost to be a barrier. And if it's the only barrier, then we're going to work really hard to try to make it affordable and easy for you to continue. So reach out to our team if you're struggling with the payments, and we will work with you for financial assistance, and try to figure out how you can continue receiving services during a difficult time.
Perfect. Oh my God, that's fantastic. Is there anything we have not hit on that you think would be helpful for people thinking about using BetterHelp, that are looking for a therapist, that are looking for a company to go to? Is there anything that we have not discussed that you think would help them?
For anybody that has concerns about how their information is being used after they've provided this kind of private stuff. So I will add, you and your therapist are able to see the messages you send, of course. We have an interactive worksheet library. So if you complete any of these worksheets that are activities given to you by your therapist, whatever you submit, your therapist will be able to see those too. Your therapist can also see journal entries you submit if you opt into sharing journal entries, if that's one of our features as part of the account. And if you consent, a licensed therapist who's employed as part of the BetterHelp clinical operations team might review correspondence with your therapist for quality assurance purposes. For example, if you raise a concern about your therapist, or if we have concerns about a specific therapist's clinical care. In addition, our internal trust and safety or legal teams may review correspondence for specific accounts if we have a reason to believe that there is a security, legal, or fraud issue occurring with that specific account. Messages with your therapist are not shared with any third party, and your live sessions are not recorded. We also don't share when you send a message or have a session with your therapist with any third party. keep in mind that third party means an entity that is not BetterHelp, not a service provider, not a therapist, or any other parties that are specifically called out in our privacy policy, which will be linked below.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that. And that's huge, because when people go to start therapy, trust, especially if you're dealing with the population that has had a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, trust is of the utmost importance. So knowing that they're safe, that their information is safe, that their therapist is safe, that they're, that is just phenomenal and huge and really, really, really important. So thank you for bringing that up. That's fantastic. Any last thoughts? Anything else we need to know?
I think this was a great starter for folks that are looking for introductions to what BetterHelp is, how it works. So I think we covered a good bit there, and happy to answer any other questions.
Great. Well, we're kind of limited on time, but let me see. I had some other questions. Where did I put them? Okay. Okay. So in the continuing education units,
Mm-hmm.
so it's more than just trauma. They've got continuing education on basically every subject that you could possibly think of. I mean, we're talking anxiety and depression and, bipolar, all those fun topics. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want to make clear to everybody, this is not just for people that have been through trauma. This is people that have got mental health needs of any kind, whether it's depression or anxiety or family issues or whatever. So this is great to know. I can't think of anything else to ask you unless you can think of something else.
Um, I mean, I think my last thing is like something I share with pretty much everybody in my life. I think personal mission. Anybody that's on the fence about considering getting therapy, my encouragement is if you're already kind of thinking about it, then that's a good enough reason to start the journey. And you can try it and find that it's not for you, and that's okay too. But you won't know unless you try. And for folks that are interested in some of the other services that BetterHelp provides, there are things beyond your one-on-one sessions with therapists that you can get access to. BetterHelp also is now facilitating group sessions. I think we all know through the power of research that there is something very impactful with sharing your experience with other people. And yes, your therapist can normalize your experience, but how much bigger of an experience is it when you have a group of others, like-minded people sometimes, or even a diverse group of people, everybody's from different walks of life, and you hear firsthand this other person experiencing something that you've gone through. So you can also sign up for group sessions here. And we also offer something that's more educational by way of like a seminar. We call them classes. And we have some of our BetterHelp therapists facilitate these seminars in which they talk about or give a short presentation on a variety of different topics, such as the ones you've lifted, but some things like, some hot topics like dating in 2023,
Oh my
or
gosh,
how to
that's a
deal
huge
with,
one.
difficult
Yeah.
relationships or loss of a job or like a forced move that you're not keen on. All these different topics that anybody can think of needing help and support with. We try to offer educational components as well on top of the individual therapy. So there's a lot of things that people can explore and check out on BetterHelp. And I think really my final word is, even if BetterHelp's not for you, I still encourage everybody to continue exploring what it is in this world that will help them find their own internal peace, authenticity, and healing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today and for educating everybody about BetterHelp. And I will hopefully have you back on at some other point. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.